All right, welcome back to Coach Convo. We are here today with Coach Jeremy Wentrcek from the great state of Texas. Coaches six-man football in Texas, and I thought it'd be great to get his perspective on our game and the opportunities that are available in six-man football. So, first off, Coach, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely, thank you for having me, Scott. I've been looking forward to it all weekend.
All right, sounds good. So just start off, tell us a little bit about your background in athletics in general and in coaching.
Sure. So, I grew up in a little town in Central Texas called Rogers. Rogers is a 2A school. Then they were 3A now in Texas. So we're on the smaller end. Played 11-man football, and that was one of those little towns where when Friday night rolled around and there was an out-of-town football game, they turned out the lights and rolled up the carpets, and everybody just went where the football team was. And so there was a lot of tradition there. Loved the sport. Knew that I was going to be a part of it ever since I was in grade school. There was a school right down the road from us, another town smaller than Rogers, and it was called Buchholz, Texas, and they played six-man football. And so I was exposed to it a little bit. At that time, we had some friends that we would go watch if we weren't playing on Saturdays a lot. So we would go watch them if we weren't playing that night. And so I got exposed to it a little bit then. Went to college at the University of Mary Hardin-Baylor, who now is a Division III powerhouse. At that time, they did not have a football program. So they actually had a predecessor to their program now, which was a six-man football program. I got to be a part of that. So I actually got to play six-man football in college there at Mary Hardin-Baylor. Shortly after that, there was, graduated from Mary Hardin-Baylor. There was a small Christian school there. They're right down the road. And went to church with their head of school, and I really was not planning on being in education and coaching at that point in time, but he just kept asking me about it, and said, hey, why don't you come teach Bible, teach history, and then do some coaching for us. About the sixth time he asked me, I finally said yes, and so it was great. I started out there. I was the defensive coordinator for their six-man football team. I coached girls basketball and track, and then our AD left at midterm, and I was the only other full-time coach on campus. So I became the athletic director and head football coach, and that lasted for about 11 years there. And wonderful friends there at Central Texas Christian School in Temple, Texas. After that, I've kind of done the coaching tour. I spent some time at Fredericksburg Heritage as the athletic director and offensive coordinator, and they've their head coach is Coach Tim Shipman. He's actually kind of a legendary six-man football coach here in Texas, and he's won, I think, 7 state championships in his time there. Then went on to Round Rock Christian in Round Rock, Texas. Spent a year at Faith Academy in Marble Falls, and this is my 5th year here at the Christian School at Castle Hills. Castle Hills is located in north central San Antonio. It's actually its own little town in and of itself, but it got swallowed up by by San Antonio several years back. But six-man football and just coaching in general has been a lifelong passion, but a career-long ministry as well, because as you know, Scott, I mean, coaching is much more than just X's and O's, and we just talked about that a while ago. It's impacting lives, and so it's been fun to see all the ways that's played out over the years.
So just give us a little taste of what six-man football is. How is it similar to 11-man? How is it different? And maybe even how it compares to 8-man in other states that have 8-man.
Absolutely. So it's a unique sport. I mean, it's blocking and tackling. I mean, there's obviously you've got your fundamentals, throwing and catching, but the difference is going to be number one, the size of the field. It's smaller, so it's 80 yards long by 40 yards wide. So it's a little thinner and a little shorter. There's also a distinction in yards needed for a first down. So in the 11-man game, you're going to need 10 yards for a first down. The 6-man, you're going to need 15 yards. So we're always carrying our own set of chains if we're playing on a different field, So there's that. Now, rule-wise, it's man, you see all kinds of, I mean, if there's an offense that could be run, you'll see it in 6-man. But the distinction in rules, everybody's an eligible receiver. So, you'll see centers go out, on a pass route, all the time. So you can throw to anybody. The other rule that's really distinct about it is that whoever receives the snap cannot advance the ball by running. So he has to either pitch it or he's got to throw it. So you'll see a lot of times, especially if you've got a team that likes to run the spread, you'll see them snap the ball to one guy, then they'll pitch it back to another guy. And he's kind of the typical 11-man, multiple option, quarterback kind of person. They call it a spread back in 6-man.
Okay.
So if it's in the spread, you see that. If it's in a tight, you see more of a something that would look a little bit more like an 11-man game where they're pitching or handing off. But even in the tight, we see people, we do it all the time. We've got a center, a guard, and an end, and we'll send all three of them out on a pass route. So
the person that receives the snap can't throw a forward pass?
He can throw a forward pass, but he can't run. So he can pitch it, hand it off, or throw it.
Okay. That's interesting. So the perception in Michigan, like I told you, we've had 8-man football for probably 10 years. And the perception is that it's a more offensive oriented game. I think they play on a smaller field than 11-man, but maybe a little bigger than what you play on 6-man. Would you say that's true of 6-man as well?
I would, just the nature of the game, you start looking at how many square yards you have to defend as a player with only 6 on the field. And so it's a lot more open space. So you'll see, weekly in Texas, you'll see scores that are 96 to 72,
Right.
And now I will tell you, our philosophy is a little bit different. We feel like it's to our advantage to not give the ball to the other team because of how quickly people can score. So
Right.
it's always our goal to hold teams to less than 50 points. And we feel like if we can do that, then we are usually going to be able to win a ball game. So.
Sure. Yeah. And the no restrictions on who's an eligible receiver really provides a lot of flexibility for who plays what position and really at a smaller school where you're likely not to have as many bigger guys, really opens things up. That's really interesting.
Absolutely.
So just outside of coaching football, just from following you on social media, it seems like you got a lot of balls in the air, just personally and professionally. Walk us through how you fit coaching into all the other things that you do, and give us some perspective on what those things are.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, and you're correct. When you're at a small school too, sometimes, you're doing multiple things in the school and then outside of the school. I am fortunate here that and when I say fortunate, I love teaching class. I've taught Bible and history throughout my years at times. I'm fortunate here that I'm not tied into any just academic classes other than our athletic period. So that does give me a little bit more time to do what I need to do as an athletic director and head coach. But you know what, my family and I are also highly involved in our church and have always been. And so we have a high commitment to that. I have always, when I was a kid, I always said I couldn't decide what I wanted to be when I grew up, if I wanted to go into coaching or if I wanted to go into music. And so I've been bivocational for most of my career. I've worked at churches as a worship pastor, but then I've also just played music out in the public and those kind of things as well. And so it is a balancing act for sure. But for me, like I say, we're people of faith, and we try to listen very closely to what the Lord wants for us. And so we feel like if I'm being obedient and I'm following His will, then He helps to keep that balance intact and making sure that we're not overemphasizing one thing without and neglecting these other things. Obviously my family is a very important thing to me, and so when you've got all those balls in the air, it's a challenge to be able to spend the appropriate time with your family. But we found a pretty good groove in that over the years.
Well, and I'm not even guessing when I'm saying you've got a fantastic wife, because I'm a believer that coaches' wives are the greatest set of human beings on the planet, and have just a tremendous amount of respect for the sacrifices that they go through to help us do the kinds of things that we like to do.
Oh gosh, and Cindy and I, this is we're on our 25th year. This will be our 25th year of marriage, and this is also going to be my 25th year in coaching. So she's been the whole ride with me, and I tell her frequently she's a very unique woman. As you know, the coaching calendar is packed, and unless you're in certain places, then you're working for a lot less per hour
For sure.
than the average job, when you factor in all the time that you spend in it. So and then just the traveling around. We've been at 5 different schools in that 25 years. My kids have been to 5 different schools with us, and so Cindy doesn't have, like a lot of wives have. They have a house that they've been in the whole time, and she hasn't had that.
Right.
So home is where we are. And but man, what a blessing to have a great wife who understands that this is not just a job, but it's my calling. So.
Absolutely. So what's next for Jeremy Wentrcek?
That's a great question. I'll tell you right now, my oldest son Joshua just graduated here from Castle Hills, and then my youngest son Josiah is a junior here, so he's going to be a senior this next year. And so so we're kind of in an interesting place. We're about to be empty nesters. Josiah would really like to go play ball in college somewhere, and so we're kind of going to see where he lands. But I have no plans to go anywhere other than Castle Hills right now. It's been a great place for us, and we've been able to watch. The program here has been kind of fun. When we first came here, it was down to we were playing 6-man football with 8 kids, but yeah, it was down to nothing. The previous AD and head coach did a great job, but the numbers when we transitioned, the numbers just fell. So it was rough. We had 2 years that were real challenging, but we saw the culture transform over the next few years, and so the last 3 years have been real fun to see them build and watch, and I'd love to see that build even farther.
Cool. How can people connect with you on where are you at on social media and all those kinds of things?
Absolutely. So I am on Facebook. So if you just look me up, Jeremy Wentrcek is my the page that I'm normally on. There's one called, and then there's one that says Jeremy Wentrcek, and it's got some lady's picture on it that I didn't even create.
That is not
me. Yeah, that was not me. But anyway, yeah, dial into that. I also have a website, which is jeremywentrcek.com, that you can check it out. And I've got some musical stuff and some coaching stuff on there as well. So yeah, there's that. And then you can find for all you Huddle folks out there, you can find our school on Huddle as well.
Cool. Well, Coach, thank you very much for your time. I think I learned a lot today, just because I've never talked to a 6-man coach ever, and I think it's a really interesting concept, and appreciate all you're doing, and good luck in the future.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Coach. I appreciate you having us on today.